Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is August 26th, 2024, and we're looking at Bitcoin. We're going to follow up with where we left off on Friday. And one of the scenarios that I hypothesized in Friday's video is beginning to come to fruition. First things first, we're going to talk about the daily here and what is potentially going to happen from here. We'll identify what conditions need to be met to push back to the upside and what conditions, essentially have already been met to maybe hunt a little bit lower. We have hit a key area on Bitcoin, but we're going to start out with, talking about trends. So if you're new here, what we do is we go through trend. We then talk about support and resistance, which I have on the chart already here for local support and resistance zones. These are the labeled zones that you see here. We'll then talk about volatility, and then we'll follow that with momentum. And, those are the four keys to sound technical analysis. And those three first keys, trend, support and resistance, and volatility, are what make up momentum. So, there's plenty of different methods for measuring things, and usually they're all redundant, right? Many use MAs or EMAs to follow trend, maybe trend lines. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. There's just different methods to get to the same end point. The same goes for, support and resistance areas, liquid zones, stuff like that. So this is a simplified example of what I do in my everyday trading for those of you that are new to my technical analysis. And in this case, we're just going to take a look at trend first. We can see that Bitcoin did complete a trend reversal. So we had the downtrend, we had the big lower high, we had swing downtrends with no closing lows being set until right here. This was Wednesday of last week. We saw a closing low set. All of these other closes were swing lows, but they did not set the closing low. So for instance, this first swing low, we did not get a close back above 60,935. So basically 61K, but we did get a swing low to swing high. Then it came down and it tried to close this low. It did put in a swing low to another swing high here, could not complete the closing low above that 59,833. So basically you can call it 59.9, almost $60,000. But that Wednesday candle did finally, we saw another swing high to swing low. Wednesday candle finally pushed up and closed above this swing high, which was needed to set the closing low. So we saw that happen on Wednesday, and that was basically the rejective zone right here at the bottom side of the recovery area, and that is at 60,002 to 300 depending on your exchange. Now, Bitcoin pushed up, held the area on a close at around that 60,300. Next candle was the Friday candle, so we talked about this on Friday. We saw that it pushed up above the recover zone, and it actually hit our lower term time frame targets of 61.8 and 62.8. Took a little breather there for a couple of candles, and then pushed up to 63.8, took a breather there, and then pushed slightly above and stayed above over the weekend, this 63.8 level, and fulfilled our upside target to $65,000. This came slightly short, about 64,987, but that's good enough for that $65,000 area, where we have kind of a zone between 65, which was one of the highs, put in one of the major highs on the daily, monthly, weekly, and so on and so forth from the prior cycle before putting in the all-time high at 69K. So we had basically identified 65 to 65.5 here, which is the daily pivot zone just above it. That 65.5 on the daily essentially got front ran. We did eventually see 65 actually get tagged. That was on Sunday. And then, of course, Bitcoin on the Monday candle broke down from the 63.8 support, came down and tested directly on the area that I spoke of, and that's 62.8 to 61.8 here, which was the lower high. So a retest of this area was expected should we see Bitcoin lose that 63.8. That has now been fulfilled. So the next thing to look for is to maintain this uptrend, we need to see closes stay above the last closing low down here, which was at essentially 58,400, with the wick low coming in at 57,820. Now, the only way that I'd be looking at Bitcoin heading back down there is if we start to see 61.8 here break down in some lower term timeframes. Then I'm looking for Bitcoin to come down and retest that 60,002 to 300 area. It can swing there, but as long as it's closing back above 60,300 and remaining in this recovery zone between 60,300 and 63,800, then I'd be confident that Bitcoin might try to put in another daily higher low. But if it starts to push down below 60,000 to 60,300, then I would be looking for that 58.4 to get tagged again, the top side of this risk zone. So we're kind of moving in from trend into support and resistance in this case. If that area starts to break down, even in the lower term timeframes, I would be looking for the possibility of a swing lower low. But as long as we see closes that stay above this 57,820 wick low, then I wouldn't be looking too much further down. But if we do start to see any closes below 58.4, not only is the on the daily especially, not only is that 57,820 low in play, but the entire risk zone, which incorporates the top side of the danger zone here, is fair game between 58.4 and 55,850. Now, that is this close open down here. This was of the prior downtrend. Anywhere below there, we're looking to the bottom side of the danger zone, 53.5, possibly breaking down from there into target one of distribution between $53,000 and $50,000. And of course, we already know, because there was a wick through this zone down to the top side of target two of distribution, which is at 49K. That was the ETF highs. This is fair game. Even if we see consolidation within the target one zone, the $49,000 area into the top side of target two of distribution here at 49K is fair game to get ran. If we see any closes below there, then I'd be looking for this zone to get filled out with price action in likely a daily distribution fashion. So, that would be the danger for the bulls in this case. But to the upside, if we see closes back above even in medium-term timeframes below the daily, like a 4, 6, or 12-hour, then I would look for the local high structure to get ran at 65 to the the bottom side of the pivot zone here at 65.5. Anywhere above there, we're looking to that main overhead resistance at the top side of the pivot zone at 67,272. Why am I calling that out so specifically? I've talked about this a few times, but it's the first major lower high that led to a downtrend, right? So we had lower low, lower high structure. Now, yes, we have seen lower highs up here by the all-time high, but when we saw the all-time high come in, we still had higher low structure. It was that lower low to lower high at 67,272 that was the first major lower high of the range. And in this case, this is also an area that acted as resistance. We see that the lower low structure at 56.5 pushed up to that 65.5, which is just above that first high or that first top in 2021. And that is the pivot zone now. And you'll see why when you just look to the right now. You can see how even off the higher low structure at 60,300, which has been respected quite well, even in the price action of the second major downtrend, tried to hold that low. It wicked through it down to that 58,400 area, which is essentially a front run of this close open at 58.3. Well, we see this higher low come in, and where did Bitcoin stop on the daily? 67,272. When it pushed past, what did it continue to test? 67,272 into that 65.5 zone. Now, of course, it was in and around $66,000 when it was holding the low side structure here before putting in the $72,000 double top on the swings. When it came back down, it put in a lower high right here, and it put in this lower high at around 70,187. You can call it 70,000 to 70,200. Now that's a major lower high. That's the run the highs zone. Put in that wick right there at the bottom side of the swing to the top side of the swing between around 68.3 to 70,200. And where did it try to hold support? 67,272. Then it tried to hold 65.5. Where did it reject from there? 67,272. Then it pushes down, tries to hold the 63.8 level, loses it, sits on this low right around 60,300, pushes down to a major area at 58.4. And this area was marked at the time. That was essentially the front run over here of 58.3. Puts in the lower high at 63.8, which, essentially was trying to regain this structure right here, this lower high structure before the trend change at around $64,000. Then it pushed down past the low side at 56.5 to hit that 53.5, which was a front run of a weekly level from 2021. So, that's more for the macro chart stuff, which I'm not showing right now, but all of that information is on there that I've shared plenty of times. Puts in the low there, comes back up, gets front run around that, it's getting rejected around that 58.4, 58.3 level right here. Finally puts in a little bit of a closing higher low structure here after some swing higher highs here to swing higher low, puts in and closes that actual closing higher low in this case, pushes up, finds an initial front run around that 60,200 to 300 area, pushes into the zone, then gets through it. Where does it reject? Well, it rejects right at this high right here initially at 65.5, tries to push through, holds the support at 63.8, and then starts to push into 67,272, where it finds some initial resistance, pushes up to this lower high structure. So what you'll notice here is we have the first lower high of the first major downtrend. That area acted as initial resistance and then support. And then, of course, we have the first major lower high here was initial resistance here, and we haven't seen that area regained as support. So right overhead, we have some pretty important zones for Bitcoin to work its way through. 65.5 to 67,272. Above there, I'm looking 68 to 70. Essentially, it run the highs above here. Anywhere above there, I am looking for it to take out this lower high, which is not just a daily lower high at $70,000, but it is also a weekly lower high, and we do need to see the weekly close above there to break the weekly downtrend. So while Bitcoin might be in a daily uptrend, it's still in a weekly downtrend. So we need to see $70,000 regained and closed above on a weekly time frame. And then anywhere above there, I'm essentially looking for the highs to get ran somewhere around, in the no man's land zones here between 70 and 72, which would encompass, the highs over here at the double top swing highs. And 68 is going to be a test for Bitcoin because that's double top on a close open basis here from two separate structures off a higher low. So that was clearly an area of heavy resistance. So above 68 to 70, essentially looking 70 to 72. Above there, I'm looking for the all-time high and higher. That's pretty much the long of the short of it when it comes to Bitcoin on the daily in terms of its trend. It's still in an uptrend. Realistically, what you want to see is closes back above 63.8, 64K or so in the medium-term timeframes below the daily to retest 65 to 65.5 and above. And if we do see, we've seen a test now of 62.8. If we see that area break down, look to the top side here, you can see all the wicks around 61.5, almost 61.8 to 61.5, where this close opens coming in, almost $62,000, right? So if that area does fail, then we're looking down to $60,300 to $60,000. I would give it some room. We do want to see closes coming in above around 60,263. So essentially 60,300 rather. 60,300. Anywhere below there, this higher low structure is in danger around that 58.4 to 57,820. So just be very, very diligent when you're looking at the charts. Realistically, its closes on the daily is when I start to look to those other zones. Wicks through can hit those supports, and if it's closing back above, like we saw the little wick below 60,300 was not concerning because it closed back above 60,300 essentially to push up. If we start to see 63.8, traded above, and hitting these levels, but closes back in the recovery zone, then downside is still available for the bears here, and the bulls have a little bit more risk. But as it stands right now, still a daily uptrend. This little red candle on the daily is not scary just yet for the bulls. Bears want to take advantage of their time on some of the medium-term timeframes below the daily to try and push below that support at the wick here. That was basically a breakout retest. And in this case, that's the 62,800 level. If bears start to regain control of that area, I'd look for them to head to 61.8 and then subsequently down to try and push into the $60,000 area towards the bottom side of the recovery zone, maybe lower. We'll see what the bulls got in them if that does begin to occur. Now let's go ahead and turn on our Bollinger Band set here. This is the Landy Bands for those that are new here. Landy Bands are just a triple Bollinger Band set. The indicator is far more than that. It has moving averages, super trend, and different signals built in for identifying what's happening with price. But I mainly focus on just the Bollinger Bands because it gives us set levels of volatility to be interested in. We see on the daily that Bitcoin is trading and has closed below the upper second and above the upper first here. I'm going to just misspeak the whole time here. So it's in between the upper first and second, essentially. This is fine. If we see a close below the upper first, which just so happens to be confluent with this high here at 62.8, then we look to the basis as the next level of volatility of interest. It's right around that bottom side of the recovery zone at that 60,300 or so. Anywhere below there, and guess what? We've got the lower first right there, right around that next support, top side of the risk zone at 58.4. If that area is lost, we're looking at this low, likely getting ran from a volatility standpoint down to the lower second. We can see the Bitcoin did get a slight bit of expansion, but has gone back into a bit of a compression in terms of the band look. So, you know, I would look for initial support here around this lower low structure, somewhere around, you know, the top side of the danger zone, lower second to begin with, you know, 55,850 to around 56.5 here by the lower second. Anywhere below there, and we're looking at re-expansion down into the danger zone, right? That means that the lower low on a close down here at 54K to the bottom side of the danger zone here at 53.5 and so on and so forth down to the 53K level is fair game. Now, if we do start seeing Bitcoin close back above around $65,000, that would put it above the upper second. Then we'd look to, again, the pivot zone at 65.5 to the upper third, somewhere around that 67,272. So that anywhere in between there from a volatility standpoint is fair game. Any closes above the upper second would reignite expansion to the upside. We can see that BBWP, which is the volatility metric used in conjunction with the Bollinger Bands, is still up over its moving average. That's why this is green, this little box down here at 62 over a 54. So this isn't particularly powerful. We want to see more closures either above the upper second for more upside in terms of volatility or below the lower second for more downside in terms of volatility if we're bearish, right? So bullish, you want to see above 65. Bearish, you want to see this cracking down, breaking structure, and starting to really dig down into the 56 and lower area to get expansion to the downside. Now, all three of these things create the fourth key pillar, which is often we see a lot of weight put on, and that's momentum. Many indicators are just purely built around momentum. In this case, you know, we take a logical approach to it and then look at momentum. Now, this is a regular Stochh, not a Stochh RSI, so this is measuring close over close price momentum. It's got a bunch of other bells and whistles on here that I use. You don't need an indicator like this. This is a paid indicator from KVDB. It can be obtained over there at Eric Crown's channel on his website. You can follow the YouTube links that he has on YouTube or on his X account. You don't need one of these. There's plenty of free indicators that give you pivots because that's the only thing I'm going to be referencing here. A lot of this is a little in the weeds for many of you. So in this case, we can see 62,900, so $63,000 is the momentum pivot for today. That will update once this daily closes. So today is Monday, but the Tuesday candle's open. So for the Tuesday candle, $63,000 is the momentum pivot. So essentially, if Bitcoin's closing anywhere below the basis here at 63, 600, 500, and especially breaking down from the recovery zone, we're likely going to see momentum shift to the downside for a regular Stoch. So again, that's measuring close over close price momentum. Whereas you probably see, if you've watched any kind of technical analysis, a lot of guys use the Stoch RSI, which is just a derivative indicator of the RSI, whereas a regular Stoch is reading the price action. Stoch RSI is reading the RSI. I already use an RSI, so I don't see a need for that. We're just doubling up on momentum indicators in that case, or a derivative of a momentum indicator, because Stoch RSI is just velocity of RSI. In this case, we can just look at RSI and reference it. We can see that this RSI has a moving average on it. This is a 12-period moving average. So if it does come back here and somewhere around the midline, we do have numbers for that. 61,500 would be right around the 12-period moving average. You don't really want to see a breakdown from there, because then Bitcoin's testing further into the recovery zone, right? Especially on a closing basis, because that's also confluent signals that it's going to test lower. We can't just take this as a singular signal. We need to take it as a confluent signal that likely momentum would be shifting. If it didn't already shift, it would likely shift down. Probably looking at structure coming down a little bit deeper in terms of its uptrend, and possibly endangering the uptrend if it starts to throw a signal below the 12-period moving average. Now, in this case, we do have the scale midline right there. Scale midline is at 61,300. Let's just take a look at where the bearish control zone is. The edge of the bearish control zone starts at around 55,200. So that would actually put it below that 55,850 level. You don't want to see Bitcoin retest in the bearish control zone before, putting on some more price action to the upside, moving that number up a bit. Now, to the upside, the edge of the bullish control zone is going to be 366, which I think is actually confluent with kind of right around where the upper third is. It's at 66,700, but that would put it right in the middle of that pivot zone. That would be the preferable route for bulls. Bears, you want to avoid that. If you start seeing the bulls recover the pivot zone, danger, danger, danger. You're probably going to get washed out if you're in a high leverage trade. So be quick to take profit and set those stop losses. If you start seeing, essentially Bitcoin trading back above $65,000, I'd be a little fearful of that if you are in a short position. So that's not financial advice, of course. That's just anecdotal advice, and a little bit of experience talking there. Because when Bitcoin starts to put on volatility above the upper second, which is below $65,000, well, you're looking at volatility expansion. You're looking at price volatility expanding within the context of Bollinger Band expansion, and you don't want to get in the way of that until it's over. As it stands right now, Bitcoin's still trying to figure itself out. Big downtrend to uptrend reversal. It's still got some time. So unless it starts to green candle its way right off the upper first, regain 63,800, and then start pushing that upper second above 65, then I'd be more confident that Bitcoin is in for some further upside. But Bitcoin actually did one of the things that I was talking about in Friday's video, and then again in a Spaces event, I think on Friday before I did that video. A wonderful gentleman by the name of Bit by Bit, and I believe I think the question was from more than just him, but he asked me this question specifically, and I had mentioned that I'd like to see Bitcoin stacks and like all these other things related to Bitcoin kind of pull back a little bit, take a breather, try to find their footing and retest some of the trend break areas. And Bitcoin, has done that so far just on the wick basis or swing basis. I wouldn't mind it testing down a bit further to 61.8 or so. Any further than that, and especially closing below that 62.8 level, I don't want to see, but testing down in lower term timeframes is fine. I do want to see it regaining and closing the upper first and above at 62.8, which is this high right here. That would give me confidence that the bulls at least got a little bit more juice, and then we'll see. Now let's go ahead and look at the weekly close, because the weekly did fulfill some criteria and some conditions, and it failed some others. So let's go ahead and get rid of the accumulation distribution zones, which is just local support and resistance that I've labeled. So we can see that Bitcoin is still in its it's lower low structure with lower highs. So we have a downtrend. So we had our higher high, higher low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low on a swing. But guess what? Bitcoin met the condition of closing the higher low on a closing basis. So this is often pretty confusing for people in, even some experienced people in technical analysis. Frankly, you look at the lower low and you look at the higher low close and you're like, okay, well, this should be a higher low, right? Well, technically it has to hold the higher low structure on a closing basis. At minimum, the higher low structure is a zone now between that 62.8, which was the breakout on the daily, and the break of structure, I should say, the trend break on the daily, and the close open of the higher low closing structure, which is at 58.131. So this zone between 62.755, 62.8, and the close open on the weekly here at 68.131 is the area that needs to hold up in order to have a chance to go and break $70,000 and break this downtrend. And you might be thinking, well, then it's in an uptrend, right? Because you've got a higher low close and a higher high, close from there. If it breaks and closes above $70,000, doesn't matter what it does from there, it would still be a higher low and then a higher high, right? Yes, it would be a higher low and higher high close, but you still need to see that swing higher low. So what I would be looking for from there is at minimum one more swing higher low, even if it's all within the same candle or weekly, to be confident that we are in for a trend reversal on Bitcoin. Some people are going to front run it, but in terms of my explanation for trend, I'm going to explain it that way because you want to see from here a trend break, so a downtrend break, then you have higher low on a close, higher high and on a wick and close can only come on closes above $70,000. So on that trend break. And then from there, you'd want to see a swing higher low for completed trend to the upside. That doesn't mean that it has to do it, but that's what I would want to see for structure. Support and resistance areas are all going to be the same. We can reference volatility though. We want to see Bitcoin getting back above this basis band at 63. 693. This will oscillate. It's probably going to be around 63,800. So again, kind of have confluence with that top side of our recovery zone at 63.8, right? So if we were to get that on a closing basis by this coming Sunday and coming into the monthly close, what I would be looking for is for the range of volatility in terms of volatility availability, and you still need to take in conjunction or in confluence those support and resistance levels, but the upper first would be fair game, and that's around 67,500 right now. Anywhere above there, we still got to look at that $70,000 area, 68 to 70. But the upper second would start to become available from a volatility perspective. That's coming in at just under 71.5 at 71,344, which is right around the highs here at $72,000. Anywhere above 72, we're looking at 73, which is 73 to 75, essentially. You see the upper third there. Anywhere above the all-time high, I'm looking at it as a zone of 73 to 75, at least from the daily perspective, and then we come back to it once it starts cracking above 75. Then we got a zone of about 75 to 78, 78 to 80, mid to low 80s from there. Then we come back to it because $90,000 is going to be a key level before getting through to 100, which I know many are expecting. Any closes below the lower first would look like Bitcoin wants to run the higher low close on the weekly, and that would be somewhere around the 58,100 level. Of course, keep in mind the 58.4 to 55,800 level. We have the lower second right in that zone. That is the risk zone. Anywhere below there, we're looking for volatility expansion to the downside, especially on closes, to test the closing low here on the weekly at 55,850 down to the lower third. That's essentially the zone, 55,850 to around that 58.4. So closes on the lower first bring into play the close here at 58,131, down to the lower second at 56K, and even that 55,850 rather. I keep goofing the numbers. I'm so sorry. 55,850, because that is our zones. I might as well just throw it back on here so that I don't keep messing the numbers up on you. That's our big quarterly chart. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. Let's talk about this. So I just want you to see kind of how the weekly volatility levels line up with support and resistance. So essentially, any closes below, 63.8 is right around, or I'm sorry, 60,300. 63.8 is where the basis band is, which is the top side of the recovery zone. Above there, you can see top side of the pivot zone is right where the upper first is. Bottom side of our run the highs above here, which is the daily close opens at 71.5, is where that upper second is on the weekly. Anywhere below the recovery zone endangers Bitcoin on the weekly of closing possibly below the lower first, which would make the entire risk zone available, at 58,400 to that 55,850 essentially. Anywhere below there, and we're looking at the bottom side of the danger zone at that 53.5 down to the lower third into target one of distribution, which is essentially $52,000 to $53,000. Anywhere below there, it's expansion down further, opening up $50,000, $49K, and then 48,240 to 45.5. I essentially call this 45 to 48. This is the bear market lower high of 2022. So that was the first lower high that kicked off the bear market in 2022. And in this case, the weekly, did meet the criteria of setting the closing high or low, but it did not meet the criteria of meeting the pivot criteria for Stoke on the weekly. So it is pressured down. Any closes below 67,300. Hey, remember that 67,272 level that I talked about so much? Well, that is now the pivot on the weekly. In order to turn Stoke back to the upside on the weekly, Bitcoin needs to recover the pivot zone. So 67,300, close above 67,272 would likely put it right around that pivot for the weekly. And that, of course, is right where the upper first standard deviation is on the weekly right now. This is important because we are getting mixed signals, which is not abnormal when Bitcoin is in a prolonged consolidation and a sideways and down consolidation. So something to keep in mind is that we're probably going to get a few conflicting signals. That's why we look at the daily first and then start to look at the weekly the closer that Sunday gets. And I'll, of course, have updates for you. I'm going to cover the monthly on Wednesday. Main reason that I'm going to wait till Wednesday to do it is because the monthly close is going to be on Saturday. That will give us Wednesday and Friday to evaluate price action, see where things are, and then talk about the monthly close. And September is going to be very important. I want you all to know September is when we have the quarterly close. So keep that in mind. Bitcoin pulling back on the daily is not unexpected. The weekend, like I said on Friday, it needed to continue. If it didn't continue, we were likely going to see a little bit of a pullback. That little bit of a pullback is at risk of turning into a larger pullback, so keep that in mind. But realistically, above 60,300, I'm okay with price right now, and especially above 61.8 to 62.8, I feel comfortable being a little bit more bullish than bearish. But if we see 60,300 dropped on a daily close, that's where I start to get a little bit more bearish for further downside. For the record, I get asked this a lot. Hey, Landy, what position are you in? I'm swing long from the lows still. I took a little bit of profit. I added a little bit more on the consolidation last week before the push up when Bitcoin was regaining levels. I did most of that just to cover for fees on the exchanges. When you trade in any kind of size, the fees can eat you alive. So you got to make sure to take profit a little bit earlier than you think you would. That keeps you clean. I have moved my stop up to break even because I'm not totally confident in price action until I see the daily at least put in another higher low, higher high structure, and then see where that comes in. And if it starts to break down, then I will be proven right. I'll probably take profit early before it gets anywhere close to where I entered that swing position. Now, for me personally, I am swing short. I'm swing long, but I'm scalp short still. I did take a little bit of profit at 62,800. That was the key level. That's the breakout retest on a wick. I might even consider taking a little bit more profit depending on the look at 61.8. But I do think if the Bears can push things down to 61.8, they might try to go for a little bit more. We'll see. I'll evaluate it when price gets there in the lower term timeframes if it gets there. But right now, Bitcoin's just chilling, just hanging out. A little bit of a pullback from here. If it's going to make me close my position, that's fine. I've already taken a little bit of profit and I feel comfortable. So that, of course, does not mean that you follow my trading and or jump in and try to go short or long because Landy's short or long. Just understand that I'm answering some questions based on some of the stuff that I was asked today in various Spaces events. So yeah, tomorrow I've got a few different calls I'm going to be doing in the morning. I believe there's going to be a Palm Spaces event, and I'll be co-hosting that, I believe. Wasn't sure if I was going to be able to, but I think I should be able to tomorrow. Thursday, there might be a surprise event. Not totally sure yet. And if it is a surprise event, you're probably going to not hear about it until Wednesday. If it's not Thursday, it'll be Friday pretty early. And then, of course, you can find me on the Nat Monkeys Spaces event on Friday. Of course, tomorrow, Tuesday, is the big one. This is the most popular event that I co-host, and that is the 100-day giveaway with the Stacks community, specifically the Welsh community. But they've pulled in everybody in the Stacks ecosystem into that 100-day giveaway, and they do such a fantastic job of running that event, giving out free stuff, airdropping stuff during the event. It's just a really cool event. And, bit by bit, and Stuart do an excellent job. And then all of the various developers and creators and, project managers. And yeah, everybody just does such a great job in that event. And look forward to that one. That one's going to be tomorrow, Tuesday at 10:30. I said tomorrow, Wednesday earlier, didn't I? I did, didn't I? Man, I'm out of it today. All right, so tomorrow, Tuesday, is the Welsh 100-day giveaway. Wednesday will be the Palm event. Thursday, there might be a surprise event, so keep an eye on the timeline. Not sure yet. It could be a Friday, or it could be nothing. I'm not sure just yet. I'm waiting on some others for that particular event, and I think that everyone will enjoy it because the people that are going to be running that event, that I will, of course, likely be a speaker, if not a co-host in, are absolutely freaking awesome. And I think everybody needs to listen to them and talk with them. Friday, of course, hang out for the Nat Monkeys event. We're going to get some new Bitcoin Order Spaces events rolling too pretty soon, so keep a lookout for that. We got to set some times. And yes, the Moist Sock is going to be streaming soon. In particular, I think the first stream is going to be about the Charisma platform, where you can stake to earn. And in the Stacks ecosystem, you can stake to earn Charisma. There's a bunch of different games. You can use staking to mint NFTs. There's all kinds of different cool stuff going on over there. So yes, there's some cool stuff. Discord for that's going to be up pretty soon. Working on that, and X is giving me problems with the actual verification check mark, but that should be done with and sorted pretty soon as well. So thank you for hanging out and listening to me today during the Spaces events and here in this video. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out.